Hey, welcome back to another Spark Outbound Live. I'm Jonathan Sellers, CEO of Spark Outbound. Today, we're going to be talking about some of the top digital advertising concerns for 2021, and why are we facing these challenges or concerns, and maybe some tips around how you can approach them or what you can do to make sure you're in a good position to be moving forward, um, and getting the best possible results in relation to these concerns. Joining me today is going to be our creative director, Howard Campbell.
Hey everybody.
He works a lot on digital ad campaigns for several of our clients, and so he's seen really firsthand some of the repercussions that we've been dealing with some of these things we're going to talk about today. But I just wanted to introduce the topic and what it really comes down to, as everyone who's watching this is likely aware, is it really comes down to privacy concerns and just fairness and equity across digital advertising networks, and I guess also operating systems and browsers, and just everybody trying to move in the direction of being better about users' privacy. And so in the digital marketing world, we've been so reliant on data and having all this information about, about all of our visitors and all the contact data and activities that people are doing on our properties, on our websites. And then there's obviously huge parts of the industry that are based around, data that is uh, broader. So it's collected from a variety of sources, but it's really tapping in onto this profile for who somebody is, which can then be used to show them ads and sell them things. And so there's really a few things that have either already been happening, are in the process of happening now, or will be happening soon, that we wanted to cover. And so there's really three things that we're going to talk about today. The first one is something that's been around for a while now. It applies really to both Google and Facebook, but where it's really affected us the most is definitely in Facebook ads. And this is what is known as the restricted ad categories. And so restricted ad categories, and Howard, just feel free to jump in here whenever you want. But just as an overview for what restricted ad categories are, is when what your business is selling or what your ads are advertising, I guess, is related to either real estate and housing, credit, any type of credit product, or anything related to employment. Uh, Both Facebook and Google have considered those as restricted categories, and so they've removed some things that you could previously do with how you target those ads. So it's not discriminatory. At the end of the day, these changes are designed to protect people and to prevent discrimination. A good example would be if you are posting a job, and previously, for whatever reason, you wanted to only target people of a certain race or of a certain age or who live in certain zip codes within your city, and you essentially want to exclude people from different races or different age ranges or different zip codes. That's no longer allowed, right? So uh, it's essentially lining up with things that are not allowed in the real world. So you're not allowed to discriminate in those ways in the real world. And so in the digital ad platforms, I guess people were, you know, uh, obviously doing the wrong, and so now it's been prevented. So what I want to get into with some of the challenges around this, because that's good, right? It's that's generally a good thing, is to not discriminate. But I think where we get into some challenges is some of our clients specifically are not really in those categories,
Hmm.
but we are still being dramatically impacted by these restricted ad categories. We consider our clients to be consistently misclassified into these categories,
Right.
and it has caused a lot of headaches for us. So, I mean, what I'm just going to pause there and let you jump in, Howard, and just maybe kind of summarize a bit about what we've been going through with this.
Okay, well, let me first start off with saying that when I first started here, I had an afro, right? And then and then we had to deal with a lot of this stuff, and it all just fell off, just magically disappeared, right? So I don't. So now one thing I can truly say is that this has saved me a lot of money with haircuts. So thank you for that. But one thing Jonathan was saying is absolutely true. A great example would have been we have like we've okay, so we have running ads for a certain client, and the ads were okay. We were running the ads for months, and then suddenly they just stopped. No reason, no thing, and it was like, oh, well, your ads violate this policy, right? And we're looking like, well, what policy does it violates? And it was that policy that Jonathan was speaking about about employment and things. Now the thing is that the job that what the ads were, we weren't running anything that where people were trying to get jobs. We was actually trying to get running it for franchiser for people to sign up for franchises, right?
To buy a
To
franchise,
buy a
yeah.
franchise, right? And so we were sitting there running for them to buy a franchise, and then but it's like they just kept characterizing it as we're trying to get a job, we're trying to do jobs, and then we're looking like even when we sat there and did everything that they told us to do, because and this is not to get Facebook because I totally understand why they're doing this, and I understand that they are definitely in going in the right direction, as in you know what I mean, making sure that nobody is you know, I mean you're not necessarily being targeted or you're not being targeted or not being
Or excluded.
excluded. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
Excluded because of your race or any other thing like that. But the thing was is that we still never. But like even though we wasn't doing it because look, we anybody wanted to buy a franchise and you had the money, hey, come on in, right? But
Yeah.
but it's like because of that, we just it just would they just would not. I hate to say let up, but that's I mean just for lack of a better term. And then we found out it was just, and when we found out what it was just one little change, and it was just that it was the just to make sure I'm right, Jonathan. It was the zip code, right? Like
Yeah.
we had to take the zip code
Hmm.
out of there because they felt that because certain people in certain zip codes that felt like they were being discriminatory. We didn't know
Yeah,
that,
and it
right?
it and it wasn't even so. Basically, the issue we kept having is there was no direction. So they would just give us this generic explanation that you're violating this policy, and then they would just give you a link to a page that just described the policy. So it was
Right.
just like here are the type of things you can't do. And it also did not tell us, is are we violating it? Are we being viewed as violating it from the employment perspective or the real estate housing perspective? Because it was really neither one. Um, but it could have, based off of how they have very broad language in their explanation pages, so it could have been either one. So it was the zip code. We figured out that it's the zip codes, and or the location targeting, and so we changed our targeting, and we kept trying to change our targeting, and part of the restricted ad category means you cannot use certain type of targeting. So we took all that off. but we still had problems. And so what it ended up being after many, many, many tests, and this is across multiple clients, uh, it was because we were using Facebook lead forms in these campaigns.
Right.
And in the lead form, our client, because they are selling franchises and they're selling specific territories, right? You have to buy the franchise in a certain territory. In this case, they were collecting the zip code to know where someone is located, to know if they have a territory available where that person, nearby where that person is located. So it was for practical use, which essentially the solution was we had to rebuild our lead forms and take off all those items. So now our lead forms give us less information. So our client sales team has less information going into the process. Um, but at the end of the day, if they would have just told us that from day one and said, hey, you have this zip code field in your lead form, remove this, it would have definitely allowed Howard to keep more hair, as he says.
Hey, that's true.
So yeah, so that was a long roundabout story. So um, that is a real world example of where we feel like either way, whether they, and we still aren't sure 100% if they're viewing it as employment type discrimination or real estate discrimination. The reason why I say that is because in the real estate housing, they use broad language that says in any any type of business that's advertising real estate deals, commercial real estate deals, housing, or anything like that. So buying a business could be classified as anything like that, right? You're buying this business, but then the employment thing would be more of a straight miscommunication, right? Because it doesn't matter if you want to buy a franchise if you're not qualified to buy the franchise financially, or in also uh, if you are not qualified from an experience level. The franchisor does not have to sell you a franchise. They go through, our clients for sure go through a process, and they look for the best candidate, whoever that is, whatever the person's background is. There's certainly no discriminatory intent in what we're doing, but there are requirements. And so if they are classifying franchise opportunities as employment opportunities, then that is misclassification. And we have Facebook ad, a rep who works with Facebook ads, and you know, they they don't know the answer either. And that's the crazy part. There's a lot of automation within Facebook ads, and things are just happening from bots and things like that. And so it's really hard to get a definitive answer to why things happen with them. But it does apply a little bit with Google. Google is not misclassifying things in the same ways so far. So we haven't had the same issues with Facebook. But I mean, we tried so many different things with Facebook. We tried different ad creatives and different ad copy. That was the first thing. We thought maybe we were just saying something wrong. We changed audiences. I mean, like Howard said, it was so many changes. And, at the end of the day, it was just a line in a form.
Yep.
That was one issue. So we,
One,
we had
right.
multiple clients that had the same issue. It wasn't always the same verdict. Sometimes it was maybe wording. We changed wording and then everything's been good. Sometimes it was we took out an audience targeting element and then everything was good. But in this one issue, it was a lead form issue. So that's one. That's number one. That's something that's real. It's happening. It's been happening since 2020,
Mm-hmm.
maybe even late 2019. But it really towards the end of 2020, Q3 to Q4, we started having a lot of problems with it. And then, you know, thankfully, as we sit today, this client campaign is skyrocketing with lead form submissions. So Um, Facebook, just think about that. If you would be a little more transparent, people might spend more money on Facebook ads
Just
rather
just
than just,
just a little bit. You know what I mean? Just a little
yeah,
bit. We're not asking for you to open the whole door. Just this much. Just this much. Just give us just a little bit to go with, and we can make so we can it could be a beautiful friendship. You know what I mean?
yeah,
But
yeah.
I totally agree with you on that.
But so the next topic I think plays into a bit of the challenges Facebook is seeing, maybe why some of this. I don't think I think these are two unrelated issues, but I think it's just all compounding a bit on Facebook and Facebook ads and the complexity around it. They're having to place their priorities keep having to shift to fight off all these challenges they're having. And number two thing that is impacting people with digital advertising right now is iOS 14. And so that's, I think it impacts anybody, anybody who's doing digital ads, but specifically Facebook is, they're very concerned about this because of how their ad platform works, how they need to collect so much data on people. And so essentially, Apple with iOS 14 made changes, and by default, is essentially allowing people to opt out of data tracking um, in the way that it was done before. And so, right off the bat, a huge percentage of people, especially in the US, a huge percentage of people use Apple and iPhones. And so everybody who's getting new iPhones I'm assuming is getting iOS 14 or later. I don't think a new version has been released yet, but um, and then even people with older iPhones, like eventually they update, and so more and more people are having this reality now where they get the option to say whether they want to be have data collected on them or not and want to be tracked. And so, but it's giving them the option right from the beginning, so you can eliminate this. So what is it doing is uh, it's reducing the audience sizes for many companies, because it's basically like all these people who they had this data on, and now they're on iOS 14, and they're saying I don't want to be tracked anymore. They're essentially, disappearing from the audiences. And so this is very what I'm saying here is very basic explanation of this, but what it's done is it's forced. Facebook has had to be really aggressive on this. This is one thing that the Facebook reps were reaching out to us, and to I'm assuming to most agencies or large advertisers, and just trying to help you get set up properly to make sure that you're getting the best possible results. And so because of this, there's been several changes that have happened. The two big ways that this affects you with Facebook ads is, number one, if you're using Facebook ads to advertise apps that are you're downloading the apps from the Apple App Store. It's significant changes in how that works. That's not really the case for most of our clients. Most of our clients are service providers or franchise brands and things like this, and so in the B2B space, not really in the app side of things. And so it does, though, affect your retargeting campaigns, um, and then how you're able to see reporting and attribution and things like that. So I know Howard and I were discussing this before, um, over the past few days. And so, one of the bigger things is the ad attribution that is changing. So it's changing. So before, you used to be able to attribute somebody who engaged with like your ad on Facebook. You would know if they came to your website and filled out a form up to like 28 days, 30 days later. and now that window has been reduced to 7 days. Um, and I know like we also do work with a couple e-commerce campaigns, and so we know that the purchase timeline can be longer. And so in this case, you don't know, like you lose the ability to know that this purchase came from your Facebook ad campaign. So once again, um, it's hard to really know the overall negative or positive around this. I think if I'm the business, right, I do want to know that if I'm spending money on Facebook ads
Right.
and we're getting, you know, whatever the number is, but just say a few sales from people who saw our Facebook ad and they're buying it 3 weeks later or even 2 weeks later. I do want to know that. Um, but it's essentially it is what it is right now. You get the 7 day window. So if you have a longer research phase product or service, this is who gets affected here. If you have something that's very transactional, um, it maybe doesn't affect you as much. But if you have something where you're gonna, you're running like a multi-channel ad campaigns, or you know, even if it's just like Google and Facebook, um, you're losing out on some of that validity for Facebook. If for instance this were to happen, so somebody sees your Facebook ad, they're like, oh, this is something that's really awesome. I'm going to do some research on it, and maybe I'll move forward with this. And then they legitimately go and do research over the next few days, come back 8 days later, search on Google, and find the company and go fill out the form, and or buy whatever it is. That's going to be attributed to 100% for Google. Google, Google organic in that case, or if they clicked an ad, it will be Google 100% Google ads. Um, so if they're doing all this on their iPhone with iOS 14.
Yeah.
So that's something, I mean, we haven't put too much focus from our perspective into that. Really, where it comes down to is in the reporting and the attribution. It does affect you if you're trying to show ads. If you're trying to show like a more complex long-term retargeting campaign with different steps, if people aren't engaging for 7 days, they're not going to keep going beyond 7 days, is the way it's understood. Um, and that we might be misunderstanding that. That could not be correct.
No, I, mean, I hear what you're saying, Jonathan. I mean, one thing I always think is like it's the ROI, right? It's like, okay, we invest this money, we invest in this much money in Facebook ads, and but you don't know if it's really working or not, because let's say, like you said, let's say if a you have a product, you're looking like, okay, it takes a minute to do it, because especially if you're running, one thing we do notice is like one thing you if you're dealing with like a lot of B2B business, you're not going to necessarily get the purchase right then and there, right? It's not that you're going to say and go, oh, that's a good idea, let's buy it right now, right? They're usually going to go through the trouble and they're going to do their research. And then if it's a business, and it's usually B2B, they're going to take their time to do it, which is going to take probably a little bit longer than a week. You got some companies that will purchase something like right then and there, but very rarely, you'll sit there and be like, oh well, you know what? Let's look through it and we'll see about next week, right? So they checked it out on Monday, and then next Monday comes, and then it's like, oh well, I'm still interested, so let's look more into it. So they give it like another day or two. That's 9 days, and like you said, once they sit there and see the ad, sit there and probably just go and look at, okay, I'm just gonna type in the website address, and then look at da 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 da, and then go to so and so.com, and they look into it. They like, oh well, this, and then if you're looking at the numbers looking like, oh well, this was an organic purchase. you know? And it's
Yeah.
like, no, it really wasn't an organic purchase. They actually saw the ad on social media. They actually saw, they might see the retargeting ads through with Google ads and things like that. And then their way of getting into it was just typing in the web address and getting there. And so then so then the company's looking like, well, the selling company's looking like, well, we're having more success with people just searching for us versus using Facebook ads. So why should we keep running through Facebook ads, not realizing that, hey, the person actually saw you first through a Facebook ad. It
Yeah.
was the initial ad, and so
Yeah.
and then like I said, so that's it. So that's one scenario I'm seeing, or one a scenario that I believe I'm seeing that really could affect the ROI of purchases, and then it's like if you they say okay, turn off the Facebook ads, and then none of the stuff is coming in. Like, well, what's going on? Why is it that
Yeah.
And it's like we don't, and we don't, and like I said, I think that's the only thing that's one of the things I'm seeing that might be affected by it.
Yeah. Yeah. Companies are going to have to assume a little bit more than in the past they were able to know more certain with more certainty, and now it's going to be more assumptions that, I mean, at the one thing, at the basic level, with Google Search Console, you know what, and depending on what other technology you're using, you know what people searched to get to your site from organic to a degree, and yeah, and you're going to have to just do some assumptions. If brand search increases significantly, brand search conversions, right? You have to assume, how did those people know, or you have to question, how do these people know about our brand? How did all, these, if we're looking at it historically, and it's like we've been pretty consistent, but now it increased. Um, and this is assuming that you have your attribution set up where you're truly tracking and you know where everything is coming from. So,
Right.
but yeah, and in addition to that, so the time frame, the other thing is you're losing the demographic information. So when you see the campaigns and you're looking at the sex, the age, things, even location, I think you're losing some of that now within Facebook ads itself. So that when you're just judging, you know, how to set up targeting, you're not even you're not even getting all of that information from iOS 14 users. You also have to do some setup things. I'm not going to go into this. There's resources online. Facebook has published some resources, but there's just some setup things you need to do to prepare for this. You need to make sure you've set up the events that you are tracking. There's certain things you need to do. There are certain requirements when you're building campaigns. If you try to do to track something that's not allowed, it's not going to allow you to do it. So just and it's evolving. This is going to keep going, right? This is a privacy issue. This is Apple putting their foot down and saying we're going to stand up for privacy and we're going to give people the right to control their data. And so more companies are going to follow. So this will evolve. This will affect every digital advertising platform out there. Um, and that's going to lead into our third thing for today, which is third-party cookies and Chrome browser. And so this is the one thing that has not really happened fully yet, but this is the thing that you have to be assessing your situation and starting now planning for when this happens. Because this one, if you are doing digital advertising, if you are using third-party cookies as part of ways that you're targeting ads, this is going to be a significant definitive change in the way you operate. Um, and the reason is because Google is now disallowing, they're not going to allow the the ability for third-party cookies to track users through Chrome browser. So they will still allow first-party cookies. So first-party cookies from Google's perspective. So if you're on Chrome, Google is going to still do Google stuff, right? So they're still going to collect data on you that they're going to use in Google Ads and YouTube ads and every Google owned property. They're going to change how they do it. but they're still going to do it. They're in the long story short is they're going to try to take away the individual profile, and they're going to try to make it anonymous, but essentially still, if you're interested in something, they're still going to show you ads related to that thing, but they're going to do it not off of you as Jonathan Sellers and Jonathan Sellers devices, but they're going to say Jonathan Sellers is interested in this group of things, and these many other people are interested in this group of things, and we're not going to know that we're showing this to Jonathan, but we're going to know that he's in this bucket and he could potentially be, you know, he could potentially see it. So this is for people who are much smarter than me on how they're going to achieve this, and this is all in the works now. They're starting to test some of these methodologies out. At the end of the day, uh, my opinion on this is it's not going to change much of the user experience around the issues that I think most common people are concerned with retargeting and things like that. I think mostly you're still going to think it's still going to be the same. You're still going to see ads for things that you were interested in because you went to websites or because you interacted with other things online. So I don't think this is going to really change that. I think how it works, which most people don't know how it works to begin with, I think how it works will change. And I think, yeah, so theoretically, like if you go and look at your user profile online, theoretically you won't be able to see all this information about yourself, and then Google and Google partners or data partners or all these other companies won't be able to see this information because it won't be tracked and it won't be compiled in like a profile for you. So it will, and from that sense, it will be better from a privacy standpoint. But where I think it really impacts people and companies is because there's a huge industry around third-party data. So with Google Chrome representing about 60 to 70% of users of browsers, and then also uh, uh, Firefox and what's the Apple browser?
Safari.
Slipping my mind. Yeah, so Safari and Firefox, between the three of those, it's like over 80, almost 90% of all browsers are one of those three in use in the world. Um, and so basically, those people, all three of those browsers block third-party cookies, or will as soon when Chrome starts blocking third-party cookies. So ad platforms that utilize third-party data companies, um, and companies that rely on third-party data to advertise, or it's all going to be a big shakeup in how they're going day to day about their business. The third-party data companies, that's I don't know the answer to that. I don't know what they're going to do when people essentially can no longer use the data that they sell. That's going to be tricky. Um, there are some antitrust lawsuits that have already been filed accusing Google of doing this in the guise of privacy protection, but in reality, they're accusing them of doing this to force out a lot of digital advertising competitors. And, that's for other people to decide. I don't know the intentions of Google, but all we can know is, how does this affect us? How does it affect our clients? And what can we do in response? I think one thing to keep in mind is potentially part of the accusation. Google will still be using Google data. The data Google acquires, like I said, it could be in a different form. But, we were discussing, I assume you will still be able to have Google Analytics on your site, connect your Google Analytics to your Google Ads account, and then target your website visitors through that. loop. And so that's kind of what we've, until we hear differently, that is actually not going to be possible. That's pretty basic though. That's kind of like, that's your basic retargeting campaign. The people you will not be able to retarget is when you pipe into a third party data company and you're piping in their audience that they've built around people who are interested in your whatever it is that you sell, and you're now advertising to those people because they're in that audience. So that's going to be a big change for a lot of companies, because a lot of companies are doing that. Um, yeah, so I don't know how, once again, if I'm the consumer and I visit a site, I'm still going to see, in my understanding of this, I'm still going to be able to see retargeting ads from that site, from what I visited. So if I'm concerned about that, that's not going away. Also, from Facebook's perspective, in this instance, Facebook is a closed system. So if I'm on Facebook and I see an ad for golf clubs and I interact with that ad, I'm probably going to see some more ads for golf clubs on Facebook. So, because that's just an interest target. It's not it's not crazy. It's nothing, you know, they could be using third party data right now, and I could go to a golf club website, and then I come to Facebook, and Facebook, because of a third party data partner that they have, now shows me an ad for, if I'm looking at Titleist golf clubs, and then I come and now I see ads for Callaway golf clubs. It could be because Facebook had a third party data partner that passed that information back to Facebook, and now they're showing me those ads. That could go away. But if I'm a casual user, will I understand the difference in why I still see those two different ads because I saw the first ad on Facebook? Do I really understand the difference in those nuances? And is a big enough benefit to me that I'm like, okay, now my privacy and my data is more secure? Or do I not really understand it, and do I just still think that they're just everybody has my data? I don't know. I think that's to be seen. What are your thoughts around this one, Howard?
No, I mean, you basically said it. The thing is like you said, Facebook is closed. I mean, a closed platform. You know what I mean? Like you, so if you're sitting there, because also, especially when you're running some Facebook ads, you can also sit there and say if the person's interested in Callaway golf clubs, if you are, you know what I mean, and you are any other the competitors, and so if you might have looked at Callaway golf clubs and seeing other golf clubs from other brands, and that could be something Facebook. Now, the question will be, would you now would like if you was doing that, would that ad follow you to other websites? You know, and I doubt it. But then
Well,
also,
that's
but I
that's what it's supposed to stop. That that's
right.
that's my understanding. It would stop that part.
But also remember that even with Facebook, they also have partner websites, and so those partner websites will show those ads too. I mean, I do we know who the partner websites are? I'm pretty sure you can look it up and find out, but I can't tell you off the top of my head. But they could be some of the most popular websites, the top websites out there, and then you're sitting there thinking, oh well, this ad is following me from Facebook to this website, and it's not like it's a third party doing that. That website itself could be a Facebook partner, and that ad could be going to that Facebook partner too. So those so
So you're saying that will be served outside of the browser, uh, the tracking that will be like flagging the person, because it will be flagging the Facebook app or the on the device or whatever. So then that's how they would be serving it on
I,
that site.
I think so. That's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
That's what
Yeah,
I'm
that
thinking.
makes sense.
Right. And so I mean, so the thing is like, it's I mean, it's complex. It is complex. But the thing is that all we're going to have to do now is just knowing it, even though knowing and understanding that it's complex, we just going to have to keep it moving and just do what we can to make sure that we get the message out to the right person at the right time in the right situation. You know, it's like it's just a moving target. You know,
Yeah.
and that's fine because one thing we understand, as Spark Outbound is that we're people, right? And so things are not just going to stand still. It's always going to change in one way or another. And so we're keeping up with the changes, and we're making sure that we apply these changes to our clients as well as to ourselves, and say, hey, this is what's happening now, and this is the strategy that we're going to go with. You know, and
Right.
then if that strategy changes, if something changes in that strategy, we say, okay, then we keep changing the strategy. But one thing you're not going to get is just a basic well, a set it and forget it type of strategy. You're definitely not going to get that with us because because we have seen like if we sit here, we're running the ad, and then you sit there and go, oh, well, this ad's just been rejected. We're getting that notification. We,
Yeah.
we are getting that notification. So the first thing we're going to do is go, okay, why would this ad reject it? And then we go look up and see what's going on. But like you'll get. I don't know how anybody else do it. All I know is how we do it. And the way we do it is that as soon as we get a message and knowing something's wrong, we go check it out and see what's going on, and we try to resolve the problem right then and there. And like I said, so even with all the changes, it's going like I say, just be aware that these changes are happening and understand that these some of the changes are out of our hands. It's just the way they're doing things. But because it's out of our hands, that don't mean that we can't do nothing about it. As soon as they make the change, we like, okay, now we change up our strategy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, part of it too is a big part of what we do. This doesn't, with a lot of what we do, none of this affects many of our campaigns, I guess,
Right.
because when we're doing search ads, like search ads is part of, once again, Google's closed, network. It has nothing to do really. There are other targeting elements you add in with audiences and things like this, but at the core of search ads, you're just saying, if somebody searches this, I want to try to show up for this and let them, see our ad and click to our site. That part will not change. That part isn't, uh, I do predict that reporting will change in this. So
Mm-hmm.
I do think the information we're able to get back will change over time, and we'll get less and less information. But as far as being able, people search billions of times a day, will that, you say, this is what I do, this is where I want to get in front of people looking for these things online. That's really the core of Google ads, Bing ads, any search ads. And then with the audiences, will the audiences be worse maybe in the future for audience based, social media type ads? Possibly, probably, maybe, I don't know. But the point is, when you go in and you define an audience based off people's activity on a social network, you're getting what you kind of expect with that. It's so those things won't change. These things, the restricted ad categories is a little different, but the other two, the iOS 14 issue and the third-party cookies on Chrome issue, those issues, um, are, there's going to be things that come out that, from an advertiser's perspective, that make up for that. And then there's other things you could already be doing and probably are already doing that you might just have to put more focus in. And then this might push people back to, publishers, individual publishers who are industry specific and who have readership in your industry or in your audience or whatever. So it might push people back there. It's almost like a reversion, or to back maybe 10 years ago, where you were still going to your, if you're a local business, in large volume, you were still going to your local media outlets, which honestly have gone away in droves. But it's going to open up the door for just replacement opportunities. So, that it's digital marketing is cyclical. It's always changing. And so if you're in this space, you know that, and you have to be adaptable, I guess is probably
Mm.
you should wake up every day and think something like that about how adaptable you are. And then you then you won't get stressed out so much.
Right.
But yeah, I think these are three things that this is real life. These are either already in action or these are coming quickly. And so if these things, if hearing these things affects, and you're like, oh no, what am I going to do? Because I rely on ABC, whatever it is that is affected by this. Hopefully, it's not the first one. Hopefully, you weren't relying on discriminatory ad practices. But if you were relying on third party data or just overly reliant on making sure you knew so much information about everybody to be successful, you got to really start thinking now, like, how's this going to change in the future? How am I going to get the results that I need to get without this? And you have to assume that it's all going to go away. So you have to assume that even more than we've talked about today will be available, even less, I guess, will be available to you in 2022, even less will be available in 2023, as far as like this hyper personalized concept of advertising. So rely on owning data, right? So owning email address, building your email address, building uh, an audience that wants to get information from you as a primary focus. That may even change your ad strategy at the core. Is you're focusing more long term, or at least more long term than transactional. Um, so yeah, so this is we just wanted to have a conversation around this today. I think Um, you know, there's obviously a lot of people out there who know a lot more about this than me, um, than we do, and there's a lot of people who understand the technical components of this a lot more. But this is just a general conversation around these issues, and we, as to wrap up, we do these lives, and then we break these down and you know into more bite-sized bits, and so we post these on our YouTube channel regularly. We go live, fairly regularly, and try to just discuss some of the things that are happening in our world with us and our clients. And hope you'll join us if you enjoy this type of conversation. Definitely feel free to subscribe to our channel and click the bell notification symbol so you'll get notified when we do go live or when we do post a new video up. And otherwise, we'll see you next time we go live with a whole new topic.
Yes.
Uh, yep. And so thanks for joining us, and we hope to see you soon.
All right. See y'all later.